energy of our pew mates. Lila, the name Lila, it has a nice lilt to its sound. It's melodious, easy enough for a child to say, Lila, Lila. Sophisticated for a grown woman, firm and strong. Often, people who retire find that they have more, not only energy for the church, but interest in what's some of the deeper things of life. And Woodland Hills Community Church hit the jackpot when Lila and Wally joined. They had a lot of experience in other places, in their life, in their travel, in their workspace, in their other churches, with their family, and they brought all those wonderful things with them and shared them most generously. Here at the church, Lila's name can be found very easily in history pages. Wally too, but Lila was a special kind of person in terms of she didn't need childcare anymore, but she certainly did keep herself busy. There were always church programs, mostly adult programs that she was interested in. There were mission projects, and there were fundraising projects. There was adult study. We had a group that met for about maybe 15 or 18 years. We met once a month, and while she and I were to be the leaders, it was very clear to me that she was quite willing, and I was quite willing, for her to be the major leader. It was a wonderful gift to me. And we met, the coffee pot was all, excuse me, that's not true. We first met here at the church. Until some of you may remember, Wally fell off the roof. And when Wally fell off the roof, that changed things in a lot of ways for quite a number of people. He was not able to get into the car easily. He walked around with the brace in front of him. With Lila's and Wally's invitation, and with our glad acceptance, we, after that, met at their house. And the coffee pot was always on. We shared together what we were thinking about, what was interesting to us. That was the beginning of our covenant group. But soon we drifted away from that into deeper kinds of things. Some things about historical interest, some things that taught us how we got to where we are in our world because of what had happened before. Lila and Wally brought their world of experience with them and shared. It was a wonderful time together. And until COVID came and interrupted all that, we continued to meet. It was coming to a close. We could all feel that that sort of energy was dissipating a little bit. It was more difficult for some people to drive in the evening, but we were all together until we weren't all together anymore. L is for Lila. She was a learner, she was loyal, she was a listener. She had a keen intellect. She was inspirational, sometimes impatient, inclusive, looking for ways to improve things, making our world a better place. She was a leader. Lila was loving. She was liberal, in the best sense of the word. She was an artist in the way she dressed, in the way she dressed her home, in the way she dressed her garden, and how she set the table for her guests. Articulate, that's what Lila was. She had a sense of authority, not overbearing authority, but a sense of having been there or inquiring about what was there and how we could enter into it together. She was able, she was an activist, and she was available. Around here, we have been saying for some years, we've been talking about the big B, about the balance of our lives, about sleep and good nutrition, and not running ourselves into the ground with activity. We try to be part of the big balance, the big B for short. We've wondered about, what does love look like? What does love feel like? As we listen to the TV, as we listen to our neighbor, as we speak to our neighbor, what does love look like? She's been cautious about Wally. When he wasn't able to hear, she made sure that his head was pointed in the right direction of the speaker so that he could hear better. When he fell off the roof, of all things, he needed a lot of care. And later, when he wasn't so clear in his thinking, she was always making sure that he was safe. She had a kind of vision that was special to her. I have some words that hang on my bedroom wall that I'd like to share with you. After a while, you learn the subtle difference between holding a hand and chaining a soul. And you learn that love doesn't mean leaning, and company doesn't mean security. And you begin to learn that kisses aren't contracts, and presents aren't promises. And you begin to accept your defeats with your head up and your eyes open. And learn to build all your roads on today, because tomorrow's ground is too uncertain for plans, and futures have a way of falling down in mid-flight. After a while, you learn that even sunshine burns if you get too much of it. So you plant your own garden and decorate your own soul instead of waiting for someone to bring you flowers. And you learn that you really can endure, and you really are strong, and you really do have worth. And you learn, and you learn. With every goodbye, you learn.
Our second and final sacred reading is one of the principles and essences of what Lila learned over her 96 years. So here to share Micah, chapter 6, verse 8. I'll invite Karen forward.
He has told you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. Rabbi Tarfon's commentary on this verse: do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now, love mercy now, walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it.
We have one more piece to the Lila's puzzle before my reflection today. So with that, I will invite Michelle forward.
I don't know how I'm going to survive without seeing that smile on a regular basis. Lila was the president and chair of Haven Hills Board when I joined in the 1990s. I knew I had joined a dynamic organization by the way she ran the meetings. She was prepared, she was organized, she was thorough, she was to the point, and she insisted that there be no meandering. You stayed on point. She encouraged and expected participation by all the staff and all the board, and she got it. I'm not sure how long she had been president. She was in that position twice. I did pick up on my early meetings with her that she was a member that had suggested to the staff and the board that they needed training on how to be better organized and effective in the areas of finance, programs, community outreach, and fundraising. So she made that training happen. Lila stayed on the board of Haven Hills and involved because she believed in the organization. And she wanted the organization, the board, and the staff to achieve and maintain the qualities of care and service that the clients needed and deserved. Haven Hills actually was started in the Valley in 1977 by a group of just regular women who saw the need. And it's now become a nationally recognized leader in domestic violence programs and in developing far-sighted approaches to the many and varied issues that attach to domestic violence. Lila was an important part of making this happen for Haven Hills and its success, and she has always been a major donor and supporter of the organization. Now, I do not recall how we first started meeting for coffee a couple of times a month. At first, we met at a mall or coffee shops. Sometimes she came to my house. As the pandemic arrived, I began to bring her favorite Starbucks decaffeinated to her house, one for Wally when he was able. Most of the time, we just meandered, talked about many, many things. But always, at some point in the conversation, we spoke of books and politics. Lila was very informed, very astute about what was happening in the world. Throughout her life, she accumulated knowledge and compassion about the world and its inhabitants. But she shared her knowledge as a gift, never as an effort to persuade. The week before she died, we had coffee, and the conversation turned to our personal lives in greater detail than we had discussed in the past. We both told long stories about how we had met our adored husbands. We were sitting in the backyard of her home. There was a squirrel playing in the grass, and there was an unidentified bird that neither one of us knew, but who serenaded us throughout our visit with song. During our last time together, it was clear that after a full life of service and caring, Lila's focus was now just turned to Wally, her family, and the beauty she saw in the world around her and in her own life. I told her that day that although I was 80 and she was 96, she was my role model. She was who I wanted to be when I grew up. Lila was a woman of conviction and compassion. She was a good and a kind person. And how often can you say that? She was a good and kind person. She was walking the earth and helping others with all her strength and throughout all her years. She has now left us that task. Shall we promise now to grow up and be like Lila?
One thing I was remiss at the outside of the service and not pointing out is what we call here at Woodland Hills Community Church the candle of life. We light it every time one of the beloved departs our presence physically, and so today that candle burns and that light shines in Lila's honor. So in looking at the choices the family made for today's service, I can tell you they did a wonderful job choosing the two sacred readings that they did. For they reflect what I believe are two essential qualities of Lila that I came to love and appreciate so much in my 13 years of serving as her pastor. So let me talk about those two qualities in regard to the scripture. The first quality came from the passage from Ecclesiastes, and it had to do with Lila's lifelong commitment to growing, to learning, to becoming. There are so many of us these days who are tempted to find a time in life, a place, or even a season to drop our anchor and to get stuck there. Not Lila. She had a remarkable capacity to keep moving, growing, and becoming in life. I'll never forget a conversation she and I had a few years ago at the McDonald's on Platte, just around the corner from her place. And as we were talking that morning, she said, "You know, one of the greatest fears that I have in life is that I will become someday irrelevant." Now, I was shocked that she said that because Lila was one of the hippest 90-somethings that I had ever met in my life. And that hipness that she had, that sense of connectedness to today was grounded in her ability to let go of the what was so that she could embrace the what will be. That wonderful ability to keep growing was built on one of the most essential truths of what made Lila for me. For while so many folks like to construct their faith built on answers, Lila went in the opposite direction. She relished not the hard, fast answers, but rather the questions that pushed the boundaries of the known. She thrived in this wondrous space of what she often called the mystery. And it was that love of mystery that made her the dynamic, lifelong learner that she was. And now to the second quality that really defined Lila for me, that came from this passage in Micah. Now, in that passage, the prophet, as we know, spells out what it is that is asked or required of us. And Lila took those words to heart and lived a life where those qualities were bedrock principles: justice, mercy, humility. The passage reminded me of the one piece of Lila that I most admired in our 13 years together, and I want to take a moment and set up the quality because it's not apparent from the reading surface. You see, when you look at the whole of the Hebrew Scriptures, many folks don't realize that the role of prophet did not exist in a vacuum. No, the role of prophet rose to prominence only when the nation of Israel had established a king or a monarch. And in that arrangement, the king and the institution then represented the status quo, the what is. Then, alongside came the prophet, who was often the king's chief critic, the force that wanted to buck or expand the status quo for a more just future. And so many of us these days gravitate toward only one of those two roles. Either we're the king or the prophet, the defender of the status quo or the activist. But not Lila. She had the uncanny ability to integrate both features, the two, into one. She could work powerfully within established institutions like civic organizations, financial offices, and even local churches, and yet never sell her soul to the status quo. For she also had within her the role and the soul of a prophet who could speak truth to the powers that be, whether they were her supervisor or her pastor. Lila could use things like the Roberts Rules of Order and knowledge of bylaws in order to powerfully defend minority opinions, to challenge our assumptions, and to birth new possibilities. And that is the quality of being both king and prophet that I will sorely miss in my time with Lila. So friends, today as we say goodbye to Lila Lee Aurich, let us celebrate two things based on the qualities I've lifted up. Let us first celebrate that Lila has now shirked the bounds of the known and has been fully embraced into the mystery that she cherished. And second, let us celebrate a life lived on principles. Principles used to upend the status quo and to build a brighter tomorrow. So may each of us here today honor Lila by doing our part to do what she did. Keep asking the questions. Keep growing. Keep making the world a place that reflects God's greatest desire for us. Justice, mercy, and humility. For if we do that, Lila's unbound spirit will live on not only in us, but through us. And may it be so. Amen. Our closing song today is the second of two of Lila's favorites from the New Century Hymnal. It's called "This Is My Song." And in a world where we are so oriented to living apart from one another as tribe, let us embrace the truth and the wisdom of this vision. And the words will be Friends, many of us know that this weekend is Father's Day weekend. Fewer know that this is also a weekend when we celebrate Juneteenth, a time of bucking the injustices and expanding freedom and liberating lives. And so today, as I send you forth with these words of sending or benediction, I'm drawn back to a song that we use in our service every Sunday to call our children together. Song from the African American community, a wonderful spiritual called "This Little Light of Mine." And that simple chorus and verse celebrates the fullness of what Lila did for 96 years. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. So go forth today, hopefully into the patio to enjoy some ice cream and stories with the family and honor Lila in the best way possible. Let your light shine. May it be so, and go with God.